Hey Wolfpack, and welcome back. It's finally Sunday, and I know you're all looking forward to more stories. As I said last time, I'm finally going to be back, hopefully every single Saturday and Sunday now, and also Wednesdays will probably be live streams till summer ends. So, with that said, today, we're reading The Way My Childhood Friend Died Still Haunts Me to This Day, written by Snouws. So, with that said, whether you're sitting around a campfire, on the night shift, or even laying in bed, let my voice soothe your nightmares. As I laid on the couch, upside down with my hair spread on the floor, I sighed in boredom. The living room had a dead atmosphere. The TV was on, but it still felt silent. The metal desk fan stuttered as it moved left to right. I turned to my right to see my friend Charlie stretched out across the couch. "You bored too?" I asked, before sliding down the couch. He looked down at me with a blank expression. "Yeah, why?" he responded before yawning. "Well, I don't know, maybe we could go do something fun?" I said, as I got up and sat on the couch. "Like," he responded. I'm not sure." I rubbed my chin for a moment before quickly shouting, "Oh, I have an idea. It's the middle of summer, so why don't we go camping?" He looked at me and tilted his head. "Camping?" he responded with a confused look. "Yeah, not only will it be better in the outdoors, but it will give us an excuse to eat sweets." He seemed to like the sound of eating sweets, as a grin appeared on his face. "Yeah, well, I'm all for it," he said, while continuing to smile. "Great! My dad has a tent in the garage. We can set it up before it gets too late. I'll also text my mom to get marshmallows on her way home." He nodded, and we both stood up from the couch. After a few seconds of stretching, we made our way towards the garage. I looked outside the kitchen window and noticed that the sky was starting to turn orange. It was still fairly light, so we surely had enough time. Once we found the tent, me and Charlie spent the next hour setting up the tent. Meanwhile, my mom prepared food for me and him. My house is very close to a forest, so even though we weren't deep in the woods, we were still able to get that feeling of camping. While we were setting up, I could hear the sound of leaves crunching and something climbing a tree at a quick pace. I didn't really think much of it. I mean, we were in the woods. There's obviously going to be squirrels and different wildlife. Once we finished setting up the tent, I told Charlie to stay and wait while I got the food and sweets from my mom. I walked through the trail and made my way over to the direction of the house, and after a few minutes of walking, I began to feel a little uneasy. I continued for another 5 minutes before I started to feel a sense of panic. It only had taken us about a couple of minutes to find a good camping spot, so it shouldn't have taken this long to get back. After another minute, I began thinking, what if I'm going the wrong direction? And that sensation of panic began to grow. Before I knew it, I broke into a sprint through the woods. My legs felt like they began moving on their own. I still don't even know if I'm going the right way. Tears began forming in my eyes as I continued running. Before I was met with the light of the house, my pace grew faster as I reached the backyard. My dad was sitting on the porch, and he was startled when he seen the state I was in. "Whoa, hey now, what happened? You look like you ran a marathon," he said, as he rested his lit cigarette in his mouth. He came down and picked me up back to my feet. I looked back into the forest, my dad's voice being drowned out by the unease I felt looking back. And then I remembered. Charlie is still in there. Charlie is inside that forest still. And what I had just experienced was not normal. Something isn't right with that forest. I pushed my dad away and began making my way back to the forest. The sounds of my dad yelling out to me began to fade. The trip this time was much quicker as I began to see the lit up tent. I could see Charlie's silhouette inside. It wasn't moving or laying down. It just sat straight. "Charlie, listen! Something is seriously wrong about this place!" I exclaimed as I got closer. The silhouette visibly flinched, and the tent door unzipped. Charlie's head had peeked out from inside, and his eyes were wide. I ran and got inside with him, but before I could explain anything to him, he began pointing his flashlight into the woods, being a little bit concerned. I turned to look at what he was shining it at. My body froze, and my blood ran cold. What I was seeing was horrifying. There was something hunched over. Its skin was pale gray, and its head looked nothing shy of a skinned animal. It didn't look human. It had uneven arms and fingers, and its body looked malnourished. It didn't have any genitals either, just a mix of loose skin. It was looking directly at us. It had empty eye sockets filled with skin and no mouth. Charlie? What is that? My voice shivered as I tried my hardest to be quiet. I don't know. I seen it after you left. It tried following you, but quickly turned to me when I shined my light towards it, he said, stuttering on a few of his words. Does it see the light? I asked. No, I don't think so. It hasn't tried coming any closer to us. Before he could finish his sentence, we heard the sound of our tent zipper opening. Frightened, we both looked to see that it was still closed. Charlie began fumbling with the light as we looked back to see the creature still there. We heard the sound again, but instead of coming from behind us, the sound came from in front of us. It came from the creature. Impossible. It didn't have a mouth, nor would it even possibly mimic the sound of a zipper perfectly. Charlie, turn off the light, I asked calmly, and he didn't respond. Charlie. My voice grew a little louder, and still no response. Charlie, please! I begged. Shortly after, another sound emitted from the creature. I turned to see the lower half of its head started to make these unnatural movements. Then again, nothing about this creature was natural in any way. Then, in an instant, its mouth ripped itself open, causing most of its blood to gush out. Charlie! The creature mimicked in a high-pitched voice. Charlie! It said again, this time adding a giggle at the end. Its voice was horrifying. It sounded like it was trying to mimic my voice. Charlie gripped my arm. Steph, I'm scared, he said, his voice quivering. Stephanie, the creature said, as blood continued to drip from its mouth. I tensed my whole body, and Charlie's grip got stronger. We sat there for what felt like forever, just thinking of what to do, before Charlie made a decision, one that cost his life. Just like how its mouth did, its eyes ripped themselves open, and these pitch-black voids with a white pupil staring back at us. That seemed to be the breaking point for Charlie, as he began quickly forcing the zipper open and began running. Charlie, wait! I tried to yell out before a horrifying scream came from the monster. I looked over to see that it was no longer there. I jumped up and ran out of the tent before hearing another screech from in front of me. I continued running before I seen Charlie to my left. The creature had him by the neck and held him off to the ground. Steph, please, please! He cried out, before the creature began digging its fingers deep into his throat. His screams began to fade while I watched in horror as the creature began drilling into his torso with its jagged fingers. I quickly scurried away back through the forest into the house. I reached the backyard and looked behind me. It was just the pitch-black forest. The creature had thankfully given up on chasing me. I rushed inside to my mother's surprise. Oh, you're late. Food was ready an hour ago. I was out of breath from running, so it was a bit difficult to speak. But after I explained everything that had just happened, my mother was very concerned and called the police to investigate the area the next day. I soon went to bed, and during my sleep I had nightmares of that creature, as well as Charlie's cries for help. The police searched the forest area and soon uncovered the body of an 11-year-old boy. His torso had been dug into, and most of his organs were missing. His neck had also been severely damaged, as well as most of his limbs. The police had concluded that it was an animal who had killed Charlie. I tried to tell them what we saw in that forest, but nobody believed me. I was told they were visual hallucinations. I don't know what it was in that forest that night, and even to this day, it still haunts me. And who knows what kind of torture he could have gone through. The brutal way he was killed is something that I will never, ever wish upon someone else. Thanks for listening, Wolfpack. If you want to submit your own story, the links for my email and subreddit will be down below. I've also created a Discord, so if you want to join that, the link will be in the description down below as well. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And with that said, have beautiful nightmares, and I will see you next time.